Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling a fascinating, I think a really critical paradox today.
Mm-hmm.
How can global energy markets be so exposed to all this instability in the Middle East, the Red Sea, everything happening there, yet the price of oil is, well, it's pretty calm.
It doesn't seem to add up.
It really doesn't. If the tension is this high, why isn't that translating directly into, panic at the pump for you?
And that's the core question, isn't it? It's more than just a paradox. It's a structural puzzle.
Okay.
We have this assumption that instability has to equal instant price spikes. But the sources we're looking at today, they offer this profound counter-explanation.
Which is?
The key insight isn't really about the fighting itself. It's about what they call a governance OS, or the technology of managing silence.
A technology of managing silence.
Exactly. The real crisis we're looking at is the erosion of the very system that's designed to prevent a price spike.
Okay, so that sets our mission perfectly.
Yeah.
We need to get a handle on why this silence is so necessary, who's enforcing it, why, and this is the most important part, what changes for you in your daily life before the price on the sticker ever moves.
Right.
The central idea here is that this Middle East membrane, this critical surface, it's not going to break because of some big war. It'll break when the ability to manage this silence just runs out.
And here's the crucial nugget for you listening.
This is it.
The price is the absolute last thing to react. It's a system that is actively choosing to keep the numbers stable, even if it means the substance, the reliability, the logistics is degrading underneath.
So let's start at the very beginning, the root cause. Why is every major player, both in the region and, globally, so invested in not talking about the risks? What pressures are forcing this managed silence? It sounds less like denial and more like a real strategic necessity.
It is an absolute necessity because you've got multiple very high-pressure dynamics all converging at once.
And nobody wins if the price goes wild.
Zero actors benefit from that kind of volatility. So we can break this down into two major sort of non-overlapping dynamics that force this quiet adjustment.
Okay, let's start with the first one. The internal dynamics inside the Middle East itself. What does that landscape actually look like?
We have to understand that the region is, on the surface, stable in its form. But underneath, it's incredibly unstable in its coordination.
Right.
Take Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They're still formal allies, right? They work together to keep the oil flowing. But their profit functions, as the source calls them, are asynchronous.
Hang on, that's pretty dense language. What does asynchronous profit functions actually mean in plain English?
Right, yeah, it's a bit academic. It just means their long-term goals aren't really lined up anymore.
So they're not pulling in the same direction?
Not perfectly, no. They're kind of forced into this partnership by geography and shared threats, but their core incentives, where they want to invest, their vision for an energy transition, they're starting to diverge.
And that creates uncertainty.
Massive uncertainty. It's much harder to price that kind of quiet divergence than it is an open rivalry.
So on the surface, it's all order, but underneath, the gears are kind of grinding against each other.
Precisely. And now you have to layer on top of that all the regional conflicts. The Yemen conflict is in, let's call it a reconfiguration phase.
A tense pause, not a resolution.
Exactly. Then you have Israel, which is sort of locked in this inescapable loop of short-term security moves that constantly destabilize its neighbors.
Right.
And then there's Iran juggling its external deterrence with proxies and so on, while facing really severe internal instability.
Wow.
So the result of all that is this desperate collective need to keep the oil flowing and maintain order without letting any one thing escalate into a full-blown panic.
That is an immense amount of internal pressure.
Yes.
So how does that meet the external pressure? Tell us about this China and Venezuela factor.
This is the second piece, and it just dramatically cranks up the pressure to keep everything quiet. So Venezuela has recently had renewed political instability, more sanctions restructuring. And this matters because for years, China was relying very heavily on this discounted shadow oil from Venezuela.
Oil that moves outside the normal markets.
Right. It was reliable, it was discounted, and now that supply is shrinking and shrinking fast.
So China has this huge demand vacuum that it has to fill, like yesterday. Why not just go onto the open market and buy what it needs?
Because the one thing China cannot afford is a visible price shock. If they started bidding up prices on the global market, it would wreck their domestic economy, their manufacturing competitiveness. So the strategic play is to quietly, rapidly reallocate all that demand.
And it gets reallocated towards the Middle East.
It has to. And those adjustments have to happen through logistics, through contracts, through insurance changes, not through the price signal. The goal is maximum quiet adjustment, not letting the price scream alarm to the whole world.
I get it now.
Yeah.
So the internal instability of the Middle East meets this absolute structural need from China to keep prices low.
Yep.
And that intersection acts like a vice, forcing everyone to build and maintain this very expensive system of managed silence.
That's the perfect operational summary. The sources call this silence a sophisticated, intentional operational system. An OS?
So it's not an accident.
Not at all. It's a collection of practical manipulations designed specifically to absorb shocks away from the price tag.
So this silence we're talking about, it's not denial. It's an actual governance technique. It's like a huge infrastructure project running just below the surface.
Exactly.
How is it enforced on the ground, away from the headlines?
Think of this OS as having, say, 3 main levers. Its whole function is to adjust the substance, the conditions, the reliability, the actual credit without moving the number. The price.
Like a team fixing pipes underground so the water meter reading never changes?
That's a great analogy. The first and most important lever is changing maritime insurance and reinsurance conditions. So instead of the price of insurance going through the roof, insurers manage the risk by adding exclusions. They'll add special clauses for certain areas, or they'll mandate specific, often longer and less efficient shipping routes.
They're managing the risk profile, not the cost.
They're managing it away from the cost, yes. The ship still sails, the cargo still moves, but the underlying protection is silently getting worse, or at least more complicated.
Okay, what's the second lever?
The second involves these micro-adjustments in port practices, things you'd never see.
Like what?
Subtle changes to blending procedures for different grades of oil, or harbor operations, loading schedules, things that just add a little bit of friction, slow things down, affect reliability, but don't change the contracted cost per barrel.
The friction is absorbed at the dock. And the third one?
The third one is the one we do see in the headlines,
Right.
Restricting all military actions so they are permanently less than war or less than accident.
Harassment, but never systemic disruption.
That's the goal. And the absolute center of this whole mechanism, according to the sources, is the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They call it the agreed silence point.
What does that mean, an agreed silence point?
It's the perfect definition of sustained, unresolved tension. It's a state where, and I'm quoting here, nobody can say the route is completely blocked, but nobody can say there is no problem either.
Wow.
And that limbo allows the OS to keep operating. If the route was officially blocked, the price would move instantly. If it were perfectly safe, all those insurance adjustments would be unnecessary.
So silence here is a calculated, ongoing substitute for actual order.
Yes.
It's an incredibly expensive, temporary technology that just maintains the illusion of stability while the real conditions are eroding every single day.
And that's exactly why we have to watch the system stress points. The sources are pretty clear that this managed silence is politically unstable within, say, 3 to 9 months.
And after that?
Potentially unsustainable after 18 months, just given the sheer force of the pressures we talked about converging.
Okay, so if everybody just watches the price of oil, but you're telling us that's the last thing to move, it's too late, what should we actually be watching for? This is where the sequence really matters.
This is the single most actionable piece of this whole deep dive. If you take one thing away, it should be this. The difference between the failure scenarios is not what breaks, but the sequence in which it breaks.
Okay.
And the most likely, most insidious route is this gradual degradation while the silence is maintained.
Let's walk through the 3 scenarios the analysis lays out, starting with the baseline.
Okay, scenario A is basically where we are now. It's called degradation. The silence is maintained, the price looks flat. But under the surface, the contract terms, the shipping routes, the insurance conditions, the whole structural substance is quietly getting worse.
It's a slow erosion of trust. The system is just absorbing shock after shock.
Until it runs out of that internal capacity to absorb anymore.
And what happens then, when the system can't bend anymore and it just breaks?
That brings us to scenario B, which the sources call sudden death. This is a much faster structural failure that completely bypasses the price signal at first.
What does it look like?
It looks like sudden logistical delays. It looks like a localized refusal of insurance coverage for a specific port or a specific cargo, or an accident where nobody can agree on who is responsible.
Right.
And crucially, in scenario B, the logistics delay comes before the price reaction. The physical world, the actual movement of things, breaks first. The price only reacts later when the market is scrambling to figure out what just happened.
That feels like the most dangerous one because it gives you no warning, no monetary signal.
It is the most dangerous because it's a failure of trust, not just a failure of supply. You can't insure against a disruption that has no clear cause attached to it.
Okay, and what about the last one, scenario C, the kind of crisis we all expect to see?
Scenario C is when the system finally abandons silence and the price speaks.
And what does that take?
It requires a major, clear explanation, something like a new, undeniable sanction, or a huge, specific event that can be attached to the price movement. In that case, the price moves first, and the market feels like it understands what happened.
Even if the underlying causes were there all along.
Exactly.
So the critical takeaway for all of us observing this is, if you start to see significant, unexplained delays in logistics, or you hear about contract terms changing without a big event or a price spike, you are witnessing scenario B.
You're seeing the managed silence failing from the inside out.
The crisis is already physical, even if it hasn't hit your wallet yet.
That's right.
Okay, this is where we bring it all home. If the price tag is the absolute last signal, what are the early signs we should be looking for in our own lives? What does this look like on the high street or, in your online shopping cart?
The sources show the impact transfers to consumer life in a really predictable, non-price sequence.
Okay.
Companies, because they're closer to the supply chain, they move first. They see the quiet risk and they integrate it into how they operate.
How does their behavior change before the price tag ever moves?
They immediately start increasing their inventory days. They hold more stock, and they diversify their procurement sources, even if it's more expensive.
So they're absorbing the costs internally.
They are. Their main focus shifts from maximizing short-term profit to just guaranteeing that they have a reliable supply.
Then, after that, the impact transfers to us, the consumer. The living conditions change. Where do we see this erosion?
This is the crucial stage for you to watch. The change appears in 3 key areas, and none of them are about price. They're all about choice and availability.
What's the first one?
First is reduced product assortment. You might not see the price go up, but you'll notice fewer color options for a product, fewer brands of a specific item on the shelf, a consolidation of product lines.
Okay.
Second is delivery uncertainty. And this isn't just a longer wait time, it's wildly varying and unclear lead times. The estimated arrival date just keeps shifting, or it stretches from, 3 days to 6 weeks for no obvious reason.
I've definitely seen that. The uncertainty is the real cost, not the sticker price. What's the third sign?
The third is specification changes. This one is really subtle, but it's important.
Go on.
You buy the same product, it costs the same, but the quality of the materials, the thickness of the packaging, the grade of some minor component like a zipper or a button has been quietly changed.
It's been substituted for something cheaper.
Exactly. The manufacturer has absorbed the higher logistical cost by quietly reducing the cost of the substance of the product itself.
So the summary is pretty stark then. Life changes by being unable to choose long before it changes by getting expensive.
That's it.
The crisis shows up as inconvenience, as uncertainty, as reduced quality, all while the price signal stays completely calm.
Precisely. And that raises a really important question for all of us, for society. If prices stay calm, how do you maintain trust in the system when inconvenience and unexplained delays and reduced choice are just everywhere?
That's the real psychological friction.
That is the friction of the Silence OS running at full tilt.
We started with this deep paradox, profound instability in the world energy core, but no price movement. And we end with, I think, a lot of clarity. The stability is just an appearance, and it's being actively purchased through this very expensive system of managed silence.
And that system inevitably erodes the integrity underneath it, the logistics, the contracts, the choices you have.
The real crisis isn't about a war breaking out. It's about the exhaustion of the ability to keep managing this temporary silence.
Well said.
We've established that the critical signal to watch is the change in your available choices, your options, and the system's reliability, not the monetary cost. We've learned that structural failure happens in a sequence. It's conditions, logistics, choice, and then finally, price.
That's the order breakdown.
So here's something for you to mull over on your own. Next time you're buying something with a long supply chain, a new phone, certain kinds of food, maybe furniture, just think about your options. Where have you recently noticed a real reduction in choice? Or a weirdly wide, unexplained variance in the delivery estimate, all without any change in the sticker price? That might just be the system speaking to you in a language that is far more reliable than money. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.